Nigeria has for decades been severely challenged by the lack of reliable data on its population, with successive regimes failing to address the problem. The National Identity Management Commission, NIMC, is collating the data, and the Commission is making the National Identification Number a requirement in national exercises, one of which is the registration for the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board examination. However, there are challenges. My guest explains this integration process. Hello there. Welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Ibrahim Adra. Residents of Kujere Council are asking the Federal Capital Territory Administration to intervene and address the abandoned projects in their area. We have details in the FCT in Focus segment. We also have a conversation on biometric data collection in the interview segment. But first, here are the stories that made the headline within the week in the nation's capital. The federal government has been giving the conditions upon which the nation's borders will be reopened. Addressing a news conference after a meeting of the Interministerial Committee on the temporary partial closure of land borders, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyama, insists that all warehouses on the border between Nigeria and other West African countries must be shut down.
On the transportation of goods within ECOWAS and across borders, we will now insist on proper recognized packaging of those goods. No longer will we have, goods, all shapes and sizes, just going through the borders. We're going to have an accepted conditions for the packaging of goods that will be transported by road across our borders.
Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo says Nigeria is ready for business as he declares open the second edition of the Nigeria-Canada Investment Summit 2019. He says the country has in place strategies that make it the most logical destination for investment.
We are determined not just to ensure that we keep to the plans that we put in place, but that we encourage all of our partners to work with us. The next few years promise to be exciting for industry, trade and commerce in Nigeria, especially with the coming into force of the African Continental Free Trade Area agreements. Nigeria remains the most logical destination for reaping maximum benefit from these agreements.
The House of Representatives is urging President Muhammadu Buhari to confer a posthumous national honor on late Dr. Stella Adedavo. The lawmakers are also calling on the Federal Ministry of Education to ensure the inclusion of Dr. Adedavo's heroic deeds in the education curricula to build a spirit of patriotism and nationalism in the younger generation. This is coming 5 years after Dr. Adedavo died from the Ebola virus, which she contracted while restraining a Liberian man, Patrick Sawyer, who had entered the country with the virus. Peace will soon be restored to the border towns in Ebonyi, Benue and Cross River states. Addressing State House correspondents after a meeting with Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the Acting Director General of the National Boundary Commission, Mr. Adamu Adaji, explains that a monitoring team made up of security personnel will man the borders to ensure the resumed demarcations are adhered to.
We have agreed at the last meeting we had on some measures to be taken. We are in contact with the states as to ensuring that those agreements are adhered to as agreed. So we plan that we'll carry out a comprehensive ethnographic study along the boundary to identify all the communities along the boundary. We've also agreed that a monitoring team of security personnel will be constituted to ensure peaceful coexistence while we resume activities of trying to define the boundary.
Nigeria has made progress over the last 5 years in the promotion of the well-being of its citizens. That is according to the 2018 Nigeria Demographic and Health Survey. The result, which was released in Abuja by the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Hanire, shows that there is an increased level of breastfeeding and decreased incidence of malaria.
The final report of the 2018 NDHS is therefore particularly comprehensive and will provide important data for planning programs and for policy formulation and reformulation that can be used to adjust our approach and make better impact on healthcare service delivery and human capital development index, all towards achieving sustainable development goals.
A bill which proposes up to 14 years jail term for any lecturer who commits sexual offences in tertiary institutions has passed through the second reading in the Senate. The sponsor of the bill, Senator Ovieomo Agege, in his lead debate says the most effective way to deal with the offence of sexual harassment in Nigeria's tertiary institutions is to penalize the very impropriety of the act, with or without consent.
The strongest and the most effective way to deal with the offence of sexual harassment in our tertiary institutions is to penalize the very impropriety of the act, with or without consent, by making consent immaterial once the act itself is established. In other words, we seek to elevate the offence of sexual harassment in our tertiary educational institutions to statutory rape.
The presidency is debunking reports of a misunderstanding between President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo. The Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senator Babajide Omowurare, made the clarification while briefing journalists at the National Assembly.
I don't think by any way or manner the office of the Vice President has been relegated. As you all know, the position of the President of Nigeria, he could work wherever he is at any point in time, whether he's in the country or he's outside the country. And the most celebrated case, the most celebrated instance was when President Shehu Musa Yar'Adua was sick actually, and he could not communicate with the National Assembly before he traveled. And he was gone for a very long time, and the National Assembly had to find a way of working around the provision of the Constitution to ensure that executive power goes to the Vice President. I don't think there is any way whatsoever that the position of the Vice President has been relegated, and I think the President is performing his functions where he is. Thank you.
The Minister of Works and Housing is calling for understanding from Nigerians as road constructions may cause gridlocks in several parts of the country during the Yuletide season. Addressing journalists after the Federal Executive Council meeting headed by the Vice President at the Presidential Villa in Abuja, the Minister said the sum of 58.488 billion naira has been approved for the Bida-Sachi-Nupeko Road, which is expected to be completed in 30 months.
Bida-Sachi-Nupeko Road, actually, pardon me, and we've attached a bridge, the Nupeko Patigi Bridge across the river Niger to link Niger and Kwara states together and also facilitate connectivity from southwest to the north central and the north of Nigeria.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says one of the solutions to infrastructure deficit in Nigeria is the private sector collaborations from diaspora via tax credits for investments in public infrastructure and the Infrastructure Fund. Professor Osinbajo said this at the first Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit.
Our infrastructure spend is by far the largest in Nigeria's history. Yet the infrastructure deficits remain quite significant. We have major funding gaps, as I'm sure those of you who are following the debates on the budget have seen. Part of the solution is private sector collaboration by way of tax credits for investments in public infrastructure. And we'll put that out there, that we're prepared to partner with private sector individuals who want to put in their resources for tax credit.
The federal government is insisting that its anti-corruption crusade is still on course as money in excess of 200 billion naira has been recovered as final forfeitures and over 800 convictions secured in the last 1 year. The acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Mr. Ibrahim Magu, made the revelation at a town hall meeting on anti-corruption.
2015, we had 103 convictions. 2016 is 189. From January this year to October this year, the Commission recorded 890 convictions